you revealed this week that multiple Republican members of Congress sought pardons from President Trump after the insurrection. How many of your colleagues in Congress did that? And what evidence do you have? Because you know that Congressman Scott Perry is denying it.
Yeah. Well, the seeking of pardons is powerful demonstration of the consciousness of guilt, or at least the consciousness that you may be in trouble. And that's what's so shocking about this. It's not just one.
And you have evidence that this happened.
It is multiple members of Congress, as the vice chair said at our opening hearing, and all in due course, the details will surface.
So yes, there's evidence?
Everything we're doing is documented by evidence. Unlike the big lie, which is based on nonsense, as former Attorney General Barr said, everything that we're doing is based on facts, and this is a bipartisan investigation which is determined to ferret out all of the facts of what happened.
I imagine these Republican lawmakers feel right now kind of the way you feel after a long night of drinking. You wake up the next day, your head's throbbing, you're parched, kind of dizzy, maybe feel like you're going to puke a little bit. The Trump era was the night of drinking, and Jamie Raskin and the rest of the January 6th committee are the hangover. Because while they might have thought that they could just help Trump commit crimes and then get their pardons and slink away scot-free, turns out that's not exactly the case. Now, this issue came about when Liz Cheney made waves by announcing, during day one of the January 6th committee hearings, that Scott Perry asked Trump for a pardon.
Representative Scott Perry, who is also involved in trying to get Clark appointed as Attorney General, has refused to testify here. As you will see, Representative Perry contacted the White House in the weeks after January 6th to seek a presidential pardon. Multiple other Republican congressmen also sought presidential pardons for their roles in attempting to overturn the 2020 election.
To which Perry replied by tweet, "The notion that I ever sought a presidential pardon for myself or other members of Congress is an absolute shameless and soulless lie." Okay, cool. So the January 6th committee says he did, and Scott Perry says he didn't. Turns out there's actually a really simple solution here. Scott Perry should testify to that under oath. And lucky for him, the January 6th committee just so happens to be a congressional committee that welcomes witness testimony. Honestly, couldn't be a more symbiotic relationship if we tried. And yet, shockingly, when the committee called on Perry to testify, he refused. Which is weird, because if you were really innocent, then wouldn't you want the opportunity to clear your name? Oh, yeah, now it's starting to make sense. And beyond that, Jamie Raskin explains that, quote, "Everything we're doing is documented by evidence," as if this committee, after 1,000 witness interviews, after pouring over tens of thousands of documents, is really going to stake its entire reputation on just baselessly accusing one lawmaker of seeking a pardon who didn't. Come on now, if there was one thing you can be absolutely beyond positive of, it's that if they say something, you should probably believe them. And by the way, it's not just Perry. CNN reported that other Republican lawmakers also lobbied Trump for a pardon, and include Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, and Mo Brooks. And those are just the ones that we know about. For example, AOC also took to Twitter to pose the question to Matt Gaetz, tweeting, "Hey Matt Gaetz, while I have you responding to my tweets, can you respond to one more for me? Did you ever ask Trump for a pardon? Let me know in the replies. You clearly know where the button is." And you're not going to believe this, but Matt Gaetz never did manage to respond to that one. Guess he lost that reply button after all. But here's the most important point here that was raised by Jamie Raskin, that for these Republicans who did seek a pardon from Trump, it's, quote, "a powerful demonstration of consciousness of guilt." Now, here's how that fits into all of this. In the first couple of January 6th committee hearings, the committee has shown a number of depositions by senior Trump administration officials, including Trump campaign spokesman Jason Miller, Trump campaign lawyer Alex Cannon, Bill Barr, Bill Steppe, and Ivanka Trump, all of whom testified under oath that they either told Donald Trump that his fraud claims were unfounded and completely baseless, or that he would lose the election, that there was no path to victory. That was followed by Trump insisting anyway on perpetuating the big lie and pushing state legislatures to send alternate slates of electors and trying to get Pence to refuse certification, and ultimately inciting a coup at the US Capitol. But the important part is this: Trump knew the truth because he was told the truth by his aides and advisors. They testified to exactly that. Again, they were under oath, meaning that by going out and doing what he did, because he knew it was based on a lie, he had corrupt intent. He knowingly misled his supporters because he wanted to install himself as the victor of an election that he lost. He knew he was committing a fraud on the American people, but he chose to do it anyway. Here's where Congressman Raskin's comment comes in. When Raskin explained that these pardons are demonstrations of consciousness of guilt, it's because those people who helped Trump perpetuate the big lie and ultimately incite an insurrection at the US Capitol also knew that what they were doing was corrupt, just like Trump did. In fact, the only people on the right who didn't realize that this was a ruse were Trump's supporters, the ones treated like marks by every single elected Republican official. The simple fact is that the only reason you request a pardon is because you know you did something wrong. Before this committee was even a thought in anyone's mind, these people, from Trump all the way on down to these groveling Republican lawmakers, understood full well what the truth was, what they chose to spew to their audiences, and in doing so, that they had legal exposure. They might go on Twitter or Fox and pretend that they were doing something virtuous, but their actions speak louder than words. You don't seek a pardon for something that you think is fair and just. So I understand that trust in lawmakers is low these days, but one person you can trust beyond a shadow of a doubt is Jamie Raskin. And when he says that this will all come out in due time, you can believe him. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And to support my work beyond that, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I cover the week's most important stories and interview the biggest players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, and so many more. The link is also right here on this screen. And finally, to take action yourself and sign petitions on the most important issues, go to briantylercohen.com/petition.